Hello everyone and welcome to the epic 4th Winter 2025-26 update from GavsWeatherVids. So here we go again, we're going to bring you another winter update, more winter data on the way for you, and I shall get on with your 4th winter update in a moment. Just say that if you're enjoying the content on the channel, including winter updates at the moment, you can like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much to Shrine Bruin and Terry Scully for all the help on the video. Hashtag TeamGav. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, guys. Right, we're going to start off with some analogs. So we're looking at September data with our two analog sets this update. So we're going to start off central England temperature. So be seeing for September 2025 came in at 14.1, that's just half a degree above the 61 to 1990 average. So we are going to be looking at winters following September's with a CT of 14.0, 14.2, starting with 1951, 1952. Thanks so to Shrine Bruin sorting out these years for us. Thanks so to Shrine. Right, so 1951, 1952, cool and unsettled. Low pressure to our north and east, high pressure out to the west, and we bring the wind in from a northerly, northwesterly direction. Quite a chilly, unsettled winter, that one. Then we've got 1955, 1956 showing up next with low pressure south and east. High pressure is in the North Atlantic up towards Greenland. Winds coming in from an easterly direction. Starts mild, that winter gets very submitted cold for February of a sub-zero CT. We've got 1964, 1965 following September, CT range of 14.0, 14.2. This one we're blocking up towards Greenland and Iceland. Low pressure into our south and east, and again bring the wind in from an east or a northeasterly direction. That's quite a cold winter, but then many of the winters in the 1960s were. We got 1971, 1972. This is a mild, dry winter. High pressure up towards the northeast, low pressure to the south and to the west. Most of the winters in the early and middle 1970s were mild. We've got the winter discontent showing up next, 78, 79. This was the last time I had a sub-zero CT January. High pressure blocking towards Greenland. Low pressure to the south, winds coming in from the east. Turns severely cold over the new year, 78, 79. And then for the rest of the winter, the cold is in pretty much consistently with lots of snowstorms, freezing cold weather, and just the occasional moderation. I say that's the last time we had a sub-zero CT January. And I was 1 year, 3 months old. That's how long it's been since I had a sub-zero CT January. We've got 82, 83 showing up next with low pressure north, high pressure to south. This is a rather westerly winter. Starts mild but gets colder. Excuse me, when we get into February. And then we've got 97, 98 showing up next with high pressure over and to the south and the east of the country. High pressure to south and east, low pressure out to the west. And that brings the wind up from a southerly direction. So that has exceptionally mild February. We're talking about cold Februaries, but that has exceptionally mild, warm February. I remember around Valentine's of 1998. It was almost like summer. It was great for me, and of course it was snowing for Easter in April. And then we got 2020, 2021, so this is a classic teaser winter. Very cold winter for Scotland. For the rest of us, we're just not quite right with that trough to allow the cold consistently in. But it is a colder winter, and out of all of the winter since 2013, there's probably only that one, and 2017, 2018, that you could say, is a colder winter, really. Finally, we've got 2024, 2025, last winter, showing higher pressure over into the east country, rather bizarre anomaly. So it's not neither one thing nor another, really. It tries to be cold at times, but never quite gets there. Most January was chilly, I suppose, with some frost at times. Right, so putting all that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking. Excuse me once again, following September CT range of 14.0 to 14.2. Overall, an unsettled signal for the Decembers with low pressure through the west of Europe. So quite a mixed outlook there. All Januaries combined, strengthening the blocking in the North Atlantic going up towards Greenland. with a trough of low more towards the south and east country. So that's just about allowing some colder air in, I think, with some of those Januaries, but by no means all of them. The Februaries are by far the most interesting, not really surprising when you consider we got 1956 in the mix, also 1983. So, but bear in mind we have got 1998 there as well, which is exceptionally mild. But overall, higher pressure tending to be around Iceland, low pressure getting pushed further southwards, and that means we open the door much more to those winds coming in from a cold easterly direction. Cold potential with those Februaries, and all winters combined following September CT range of 14.0 to 14.2. Again, raises the heights in the North Atlantic up towards Greenland with a trough of low to south of the east, and winds again tending to be coming in from that easterly direction. Though it's a signal for the winter to become colder as it goes along, and maybe a backloaded winter could be expected. Who knows? Right, we've got another set of anomalies to do later on in the video, but now we're going to look at sea surface temperature anomalies. So, of course, we've got our 4 interest areas. We've got the equatorial Pacific Ocean there, the ENSO region, the northern Pacific here, with a particular focus on the northeastern Pacific. Indian Ocean is over there, and the North Atlantic Ocean is over here. That's how the oceans were looking when we did the last winter update. This is the latest, and well, we can say that let's go there. We can say, but we have probably seen the signal for La Nina. They're a little bit stronger, I think, through this central eastern portion once again, although it is still a weak La Nina signal overall. But I think compared to last week, probably a slight strengthening has taken place there. And most areas of the actual Pacific Ocean are showing a weak La Nina signal. Note as well to the south of the actual Pacific Ocean from Chile going out into the deep waters of the central southern Pacific Ocean. We've got cold average sea surface temperature, which that's often something that supports or helps to support a La Nina event. Going northwards into the northern Pacific, again, that's how things were looking last week. This is the latest. So this slightly cooler than average area in the extreme northeastern Pacific has probably shrunk a little bit. Otherwise, looking pretty warm there in the northern portion of the Pacific Ocean. Someone in the comments last week was asking about this area just here, but substantially above average, but it could be a game changer within the winter, and within the winter forecast. I don't know much about that, to be honest, but it's something that is possibly unique for this winter, and we may look in depth in that in a future update. No, just because I didn't mention it last week, I'm not going to mention it much this week, doesn't mean that we're not going to look at it in future. I've got to do some research because I don't really know all that much about this significantly warmer than average area, but it certainly is significantly warmer than normal and quite unusual, I would think, with a bit of a La Nina signature going on in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. In the Indian Ocean, the cold IOD signature continues, so cooler than average through here, warmer than average over towards Indonesia. That's a signature for the negative Indian Ocean dipole. And then moving on to the North Atlantic, again, this is how things are looking over here last week, and this is the latest. So not much change. Most areas continue to be above average with both sea surface temperature. It's just a little bit cooler through here, a bit warmer through here. That's not a tripole, but if we was to bat at a cooler than average area around here, it's a little bit wrong actually. So if we were to get that cooler than average area going around here, with it being warm through there, and then warm down here, that would indeed be a tripole. So possibly it's not all that far from a tripole, but I wouldn't classify that as a classic sort of tripole type signature. Bit of a 7-day change within the oceans. So you can see that the central and eastern portion of the equatorial Pacific Ocean has indeed shown some cooling. In the North Pacific, most areas have cooled actually, particularly around here. But of course, that's only a 7-day change, so not making much impact on the overall sea surface temperature anomalies there, which are many degrees above average. The Indian Ocean generally has warmed over the past 7 days. And then in the Atlantic, well, this area has cooled cooled and this area has warmed a little bit. Though if that was to be maintained for a couple of months with this area cooling, this area warming, and if we were to get this area warming too, then that would be leading us into a tripole type situation. But of course, it is only a 7-day change. Last week in the third update, we went through all of the sea surface temperature anomaly charts right way back to 1985 to pick out the closest matching years to 2025. There weren't that many of them, but I think 2017 was probably my favourite in terms of a matching year. Anyway, we'll do that again later on in the winter update. Looking at ENSO in a little bit more detail. So this would be Southern Oscillation Index. Remember, this is measuring air pressures between Tahiti and Darwin in Australia. They're coming out with an overall SOI number. So you can see generally positive with the Southern Oscillation Index. Over the past several days, we see positive numbers there, repeating, day by day by day. Sometimes quite strongly positive, plus 15, for example, there, plus 21 there, plus 18 there. Other times a little bit more weaker, but consistently positive, really, right way back to the end of September when they get a negative number. Remember, when the SOI is positive, the absolute setup will be reflective of La Nina. Now, the reason that we're seeing a bit of a strengthening of the La Nina signature in the ocean is probably because we're seeing the atmosphere, in a La Nina type setup. CFSB2 continues to forecast a weak La Nina for this winter, so all important number is minus 0.5, half a degree below average. So that's currently about where we are. We're going to see a bit of cooling if forecast is right through to the end of the year, going down between half degree and 1 degree below average. That is weak La Nina territory. And then coming back up into the opening months of 2026. Whether that's enough to designate the La Nina remains to be seen, of course, because we've got to run this over 5 tri-monthly periods. I don't think that would be enough to ever get a La Nina designated, but of course, be interesting to ponder what the implications of that could be. And through reanalysis, we will be looking at ENSO later on in our updates, as we usually do. Juxtaposed to the oceans is what's happening with the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. So, this is from Wikipedia. Latest scores on the doors. Miss Ford are looking like this. So, we have had 11 tropical depressions, 11 tropical storms, 4 hurricanes, and 3 major Category 3 or above hurricanes through this season so far. And what about accumulated cyclone energy? Well, Ace Master Shryan has got that calculated for us. So this goes all back to the 1850s, but we're not interested in going back that far. This is the year we're interested in, 2025. And we currently have an ACE of 96.10. That's after 11 tropical storms, 4 hurricanes and 3 majors. That's still a little bit below par. Near normal, but still a little bit below par for this point in the season. The 11th of October, would expect to have an ACE of 104.10 after 12 tropical storms, 6 hurricanes and 3 majors. So about average, just ever so slightly below par for this hurricane season. By the way, we won't be looking at solar activity for this update. So, time constraints and whatnot means that no solar data this week, but we will bring you some solar data very soon. We are going to quickly touch on this. This is the EC phase of quasi biennial oscillation, the QBO from NASA, that blue-green area, showing the EC QBO descending from the stratosphere at 10 HPA to the troposphere. That's a boundary level of the atmosphere where weather is taking place at 30 to 50 HPA. This will be an easterly QBO winter, and possibly as early as next week, who knows, we'll have a look at easterly QBO winter. So more on that very soon, I would imagine. Right, Arctic Oscillation, observed and forecast. The black line shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red lines have the weather GFS ensembles are forecasting Arctic Oscillation to go. Remember, as with the QBO, the SOI, it's just another index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. Really, this time it's telling us what the conditions are over the Arctic and the North Pole. So where the AO is in a positive state, we've got low pressure up over the Arctic and the Pole. Where the AO is in a negative state, we've got higher pressure blocking in the Arctic and the North Pole. At the moment, we're around neutral to very weakly positive with the AO, but the GFS ensembles are forecasting the AO will remain in a neutral to slightly weakly negative type state. So possibly signs of a blocking signal increasing there over the pole as we're moving through the second half of October. Although it is a very weak signal, generally we're pretty close to neutral there with the AO. NEO, same idea, again reflecting the atmospheric state. Black line shows where we've been with the North Atlantic Oscillation. Red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NEO to go. So when we've got a positive NEO, of course, we've got low pressure around Iceland, high pressure around the Azores. We strengthen the zone of west is back the default setup for Western and Northern Europe in the winter. And the AO is when the NEO is negative, I should say, then we've got lower pressure around the Azores and higher pressure around Iceland, and that is rather unusual in the winter. Right, so at the moment anyway, we've got a pretty strongly positive NEO, but it's on the way down, and by the time we get into the second half of October, it looks like we've got a pretty consistently negative NEO there, actually, throughout the second half of the month. That's telling us that with both the AO and particularly the NEO going into a negative phase, we might be seeing signs of a pattern change there, possibly something colder and wetter, maybe cold and drier as well. But it certainly looks like the overall pattern, for the North Atlantic and for Northern Europe is on the change there a little bit. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works out, of course. Moving up into the stratosphere, so this blue area just here, cold temperatures at 10 HPA over the Arctic and over the North Pole. That's the stratospheric polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere over the North Pole. That's developing and strengthening, of course, as you'd expect at this time of the year. A little bit displaced towards the Canadian and Greenland side of the pole, slightly above average temperatures, if anything, over towards the Siberian side of the pole. This is the latest GFS forecast for temperatures at 10 HPA. By the way, as we move out into the last stages of October, again, we keep those blue colours going, not really intensifying all that much from where we are right now. So where we currently are is around minus 64. The temperatures at 10 HPA predicted to be around minus 72 by the end of October. I would imagine that is pretty much, in line with trend, really. But we do see that the blue colours are being pushed out again towards Greenland and the North Atlantic, so towards the European side of the North American side of the pole, and a bit of warming happening over towards the Siberian and Russian side of the pole, which is slightly unusual this time of the year, but nothing more than that. We'll have a lot more, I think, next week on the strategy, and that will become more important as we get later on into the winter updates. We get closer to winter as usual. Excuse me again, everyone. Right, so now we're on to more analogues, more September data. This time, we're looking at England and Wales precipitation. So, it was in fact quite a wettish September that we had in 2025, similar to wet September we had last year, but less so. Last year was very wet, of course. So, we see an anomaly there of 142% of average rainfall. That's 108.2 millimetres for the month. You can see the blue line here, which is the precipitation line for September 2025, was generally consistently above average, not reaching a red line, not reaching the wettest on record, but certainly consistently wetter than average month, and particularly so interesting, rather than usually through the first half of the month. It did actually dry out a little bit later on in the month, but was still overall significantly wetter than average September. So, what does that mean? Well, let's have a look at some reanalysis. Again, thanks to Shrine sorting out these years for us. This is how the winters are coming out following an England-Wales precipitation range of 100 millimetres to 120 millimetres. First up is 1961, 1961, I should say, with low pressure coming in from off the Atlantic. Generally quite a mildish and wettish winter with that one. Oh, look, it's my daddy. It's the daddy of cold winter showing up for the first time in our winter update 62-63 with high pressure up towards Iceland, low pressure to the south and winds coming in from the east. So that did follow quite a wet September, although the autumn overall I think was generally relatively dryish. But yes, you had quite a wet September in 1962, and it falls within that England-Wales precipitation range of 100 to 120 millimetres. There's my daddy for the first time in our winter updates. How many more times will that occur? Well, we go on to 1967, 1968 next with high pressure in the Atlantic, low pressure to the east, winds coming down, actually again from the north. So quite a few northerly snaps during this winter. January and February did have quite a few cold snaps of 1968. Mild start to winter, but I think in December 1967. We go into 1975, 1976. So that's probably quite a wet September in the middle of the great drought years of 75, 76, interestingly. And this is a mild, dry winter with high pressure over and to the west of the country and winds coming in from the Atlantic in a westerly direction. Next up, we have 1983, 1984, cold zonality in this winter with plenty of snow for Scotland, plenty of cold rain further south as usual with cold zonality. But for an Atlantic-driven winter, that was an unusually cold one actually. And then we've got 1993, 1994 showing up next. So this is one of those 1990 winters that's very Atlantic-driven. Lots of heavy rain coming through, but not completely devoid of cold weather. There were cold snaps in December of 1993, particularly focused around Christmas and just after. And again in February of 1994. Then we've got 94-95, and this one is a mild, wet, windy, stormy winter, again from the 1990s. Many of them were mild and Atlantic-driven, and that's another one. Okay, well, next up we go to 1998, 1999, with low pressure to the north and the east, high pressures out to west. A few cold snaps here, but generally quite a mild winter to end the 1990s, and of course the 20th century. But a pretty long gap to 2008, 2009. So this was a colder winter, actually, with higher pressure just up to the north, lower pressure down to the south, and winds tending to be in from an easterly direction. So that's the first of the run of colder winters. Of course, we have a long run of mild winters through much of the 1990s and 2000s. Starts with 87, 88 actually, really. There's a few exceptions. 95, 96 was colder. 91 was colder as well. But generally, the late 80s, the 90s, and much of the 2000s was an era of milder winters. It comes to an end. Not for long, but it comes to an end with 08-09, which is a rather colder winter, especially so through early February, with plenty of heavy snow and a classic Scandinavian high as well. And of course, that sets us up then for a run of even colder winters afterwards, up to 12-13. We've got 2017-2018 showing up next. This one, of course, contains the beast from the east in February of 2018, high pressure out in the Atlantic, winds coming in from the east. Has a nice cold snap in the first half of December of 2018 as well. Does have some quite prolonged periods of milder weather though. Right, so putting all of that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking, following an England-Wales precipitation range of 100 to 120 millimetres, with higher pressure out to the west and lower pressure tending to be to the east. There is a bit of cold snap potential with those Decembers. And all Januaries combined are looking like that, with again low pressure to the east, high pressure is out to the west, and winds again coming in from the north. Even more cold snap potential, I think, in the Januaries. But interestingly, all February's combined possibly has the best signal for cold weather. High pressure much more focused towards Scandinavia, low pressure down towards Italy, and winds therefore much more from an easterly type direction. So both analog sets suggesting that winter potentially gets a bit colder as it goes along, with the latter part of winter maybe the best period for cold conditions. And then finally, all winters combined following September. England Wales precipitation range of 100 to 120 millimetres shows deep low pressure to the east, high pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, and winds coming in from the north. I reckon there's some cold snap potential with both sets of analogues in this update, and so it confirms that cooler and wetter Septembers can, but not always, be a precursor to a rather cooler or colder winter. But again, there are variations within that. For example, we've got 75, 76, which was a very mild winter. 94, 95 also was a pretty mild winter, etc, etc, etc. So nothing is ever guaranteed with the weather. But certainly more interesting than if we had a very dry and warm September with the CET in the 15s or the 16s or even in the 17s. Right, going to pause the video there, and when we return, we're going to have a look at Eurasian snow cover. And you're going to want to watch this video all the way to the very end, I can promise you that. But more in a moment, so let's have a little break, and we'll be back soon. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to resume the epic fourth winter 2025-26 update from GavsWeatherVids. If you enjoyed what you've seen so far, please give us a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so everyone for doing that. So, Eurasian snow cover next, which has always been a fan favourite. Let's go through that then, and after that we'll get the video wrapped up, or we'll start thinking about wrapping the video up. Anyway, right, so this is how Eurasian snow cover looked when we did last week's third winter update. We've seen some pretty decent gains for Eurasian snow cover there, or for snow cover anyway, across northern and eastern parts of Siberia compared to a couple of weeks before that. But how are we doing now, 1 week on? Let's have a look. So here we go. And again, we've seen significant gains across eastern portions of Russia and Siberia there, up to the 10th of October, quite clearly. Pretty decent gains have been made, but how does that compare with previous years? Well, let's start going through them. So, this is how we're comparing to 2024, and I would say we are probably a little bit under this point in 2024 for snow cover. But we're ahead of 2023, quite substantially so, and we're ahead of 2022 as well for Eurasian snow cover. We are also ahead of 2021, with more snow cover this year to 2021 compared to 2020. I think, again, we're ahead of 2020, but the areas covered are quite significantly different. We're behind 2019, especially so for Scandinavian snow cover. We hadn't actually got some snow cover into Scandinavia by this point in 2019, which we don't have now. And of course, as we get further on, we also will be looking at Scandinavia and Nordic regions. But at the moment, there's not much going on there, so there's no point focusing on that point. But I would say probably a bit down in total coverage, but the areas covered are very different in 2019 compared to 2025. Well, we're way ahead of 2018 for Eurasian snow cover, really no comparison, and that's 2017, probably quite close to 2017 for total snow coverage, probably a bit more this year compared to 2017, but I think that could be one of the closer years, similar to last week actually. Well, that's one of the closer years for the Atlantic. That is 2016. What do you make of that one? I reckon we got more snow this year than in 2016, but we're way behind 2015. Look how much snow we got all the way towards western Russia by this point in October 2015, so we're behind 2015 quite significantly. So, that's 2014, so I would say we're probably a bit behind 2014 as well. That's 2013, so I think we're behind 2013 too. That is 2012, what do you make of that one? I think we're ahead of 2012 for Eurasian snow cover, and that's 2011, no comparison, way ahead of 2011 too. That's 2010. just before the December to remember. That could be relatively close in terms of total snow coverage, but I think the areas that are covered are different, and this year probably has a little bit more snow overall. That's 2009, which was a very interesting year. So we are way ahead of 2009 for Russian snow cover, but notice how much snow cover we've got across Scandinavia and Nordic regions. So we're behind, significantly behind, although close to average, going for most of these years, but we are significantly behind 2009 for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover, but ahead for Russian snow cover. That year did things rather differently. Interesting, but that, of course, preceded a very cold winter of 09-10. That is 2008. What do we think to that? So I would say we're ahead of 2008, and that's 2007. Again, I think we're ahead of that year for Russian snow cover as well. Right, well, 2006 shows up next, so I think we're behind 2006. Russian snow cover. Please let me know in the comments which years you think we're closest to. Thanks so much, everyone. And then that is 2005, so we are ahead of 2005, and I think we can say we're ahead of 2004 as well. That is 2003. The view changes slightly, but I would say we're ahead of 2003, a little bit ahead anyway, this year. Now that's 2002. We're way behind 2002 for Eurasian snow cover. We've got it all the way to the west of Russia, right to the Russian border there with Europe by this point, 2002. That's the year out of all of the years back 1998, but advances for snow quickest, interestingly. That is 2001, so we're ahead of 2001 this year, and that is 2000. We're ahead of that year too, so doing pretty decently for snow cover, I would say. Not as good as some years, but, compared to the average, I think we're probably a little bit ahead this year again. That's 1999. I would say we're ahead of that year too. And that's 1998. That could be quite a close match in terms of total snow coverage, but I think possibly a little bit behind 1998. Right, well, let's go even further back. Now, we're going to go back to 1960s with this, but I won't do year-by-year comparisons anymore because we've got to get the video wrapped up. So as you can envisage, but that is where we currently are with the snow line. We've sort of got it into the central portion of Siberia, really, and quite a bit of coverage to the east of that snow line. Nothing happening to the west of it, nothing happening over Scandinavia or Nordic regions either. Now, we've got to flip this around, or you've got to stand on your head. So, I would say we're probably quite close, actually, maybe a little bit behind for snow coverage to 1997, just so that you know where everybody is. So, this is where the UK and Ireland is. That's Scandinavia, Nordic regions. That is far west of Russia, and like this is central eastern portion of Russia and Siberia. Probably a bit behind 1997. That's 1996. That could be quite a close matching year, but I think we're behind 1995 quite substantially. So probably a little bit ahead of 1994. That's 1993, so probably a bit behind that one. 1992, well, total snow coverage was probably a bit ahead of 1992, but note for northern Russia, we got the snow line all the way towards Finland there. Goodness gracious me, so quite an unusual year, that one. That was a very cold October, not just the UK, but through many parts of Northern Europe. That's 1991, so again, perhaps quite closely matched to that one. 1990, I think we're probably a little bit behind that year. We're behind 1989 as well, but we're way ahead, way ahead of 1988. We're ahead of 1987 too, probably quite close to 1986, probably a bit behind that one. 1985, again, it's all subjective as well, so that's how we look now, that's how we look in 1985. I think probably ahead, but total snow coverage this year, but the areas covered are quite significantly different. We're behind 1984, quite substantially so. And I would say we're also behind 1983. 1982, total snow coverage probably quite closely matched, but again, the areas covered are rather different. 1981, so probably a bit behind, or probably quite close to 1981, actually. And then that's 1980, so I will say we're ahead of 1980. We're probably quite closely matched, maybe a bit behind 1979. 1978, what do you make of that one? So probably a bit, hold on. Oh, sorry, when I've done well, go over half an hour without having a cough. Right, so probably a little bit ahead, actually, of 1978 at this point. And then that's 1977. So with that one, I would say we are behind 1977. We're significantly behind 1976. No comparison this year to the amount of snow we had at this point in 76. Probably a bit ahead of 1975. Maybe quite close match, or even a bit ahead of 1974. Areas covered are different. 1973 could be quite a close match, a little bit behind that year maybe. And then 1972, again, I think we're probably a bit behind 72, certainly for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover at this point. 1971, again, we're behind that year, way behind 1970 as well. Look how much of Russia and Siberia have been covered with snow at this point in 1970. No data for 1969, annoyingly. We're behind 1968, particularly so for Scandinavia and Nordic snow cover. And for 1967, we're a bit behind that year as well, I would suggest. And finally, 1966, well, we are significantly behind 1966 well. So we're not doing too badly for snow cover compared to, you know, our recent sort of 20, 30 years. But if you look at it in a more historical context, you know, go through the 80s, through the 70s, through the 60s, then we're not doing as good, actually. We are lagging behind many, many, many of those years. Interesting. Well, we'll do it all over again next week. If you have enjoyed this winter update, this fourth winter update, please like, share, subscribe, and thank you so much for doing that. Oh, and one last thing. Have we missed something? 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 Wow, 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 wow! The Swingo has returned! Yes, the King of Swing, Richard Shaw, has dropped a surprise for the climax of the fourth winter 2025-26 update. So here it is for the first time this season. I know some of you have been waiting for it. We did think we were going to bring it to you this season, but the King of Swing, well, we couldn't not do it, could we? So there is your first swingometer. This is after 3 winter updates. Doesn't take into account this week's winter update, of course, but after 3 winter updates, the swingometer is suggesting a milder than average winter is favoured by 51 to 49% there. Wow, 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 wow. I wanted it to be a nice surprise, and I think it was. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much, Richard Shaw, the King of Swing, for dropping the swingometer and being Gav's climax to before winter 2025-26 update. That was fun, wasn't it? That was fun. Okay, well, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, drop a comment, and hopefully we're going to be live tomorrow discussing this winter update at 8 p.m. So lots to talk about, and of course we'll show you some 12Z and the long range on that as well. Okay, so that is your 4th winter update. Got 5th winter update to come next week, of course. Thank you so much to Shryan. Thank you so much to Terry. And of course, thank you so much to Richard. Hashtag Team Gab. Unbelievable. Thank you so much, guys. We're going to end it there. How long have I been going on for? So, nearly 40-minute video. Not as long as last week, actually. And I think we got through that in a pretty decent fashion. So, anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. We're going to end it there. 5th winter update next Sunday, same time, same place, for the next installment for the epic 4th winter 2025-26 update from GavsWeatherVids. So for now, thanks for watching.